Hello and welcome to Startline, brought to you by the Manx Motorcycle Club. I'm Beth Espy, and this podcast is about everything road racing, both on the Isle of Man and further afield. From the races and the teams to the organisers and officials, it is all here on Startline. Well, thank you so much for downloading this episode. And you know what I really love about this podcast is that I'm finding out about areas of road racing that I didn't really know very much about before. Today, we're talking about scrutineering. Now, obviously, we know how important scrutineers are to any racing event, but what actually goes into making scrutineering happen? And how could you get involved with the scrutineers yourself? What sort of qualifications and experience do they look for? Well, I have been to speak to Dave Redmayne, who's the Chief Technical Officer for the Prix TT and Southern 100 here on the Isle of Man, also Deputy for the MGP. Grant Howard is a Deputy Chief Technical Officer for the Prix TT and Southern 100. He's also Chief for the Trials and Off-Road events here on the island. And Trevor Denning is the Chief for TT and MGP. And first, Trevor explains where we were.
Scrutineering bay, technical area, call it what you will. It's at the top of the ramp there at the side of the grandstand, and it's obviously a hive of activity most of the event time. The bay we're in at the moment is the large bay, which will take 8 motorcycles at a time, or 4 sidecars. And we obviously have a smaller bay next door, which we use depending on where we are in the process of post-race or pre-race. Yes, it can be a hive of activity, and obviously people have to queue a wee bit when we're outside here, but you can only get, because of the infrastructure, we can only get 8 through at a time, but we do try our best.
And when you think about scrutineering, perhaps I'm just thinking about somebody who maybe hasn't done a race over here on the Isle of Man. I guess it must be a little bit daunting.
Very much so. Obviously, we on the Manx Grand Prix, and again the Southern, we try and communicate with the newcomers very early on. Obviously, we have newcomer weekends, which you've been involved in yourself. So we've had them. The first one's already been, but we try and smooth this process and let them know that we'll come to their awnings prior to them bringing the machines up, just to make the actual process a lot more accommodating. As you say, it's very daunting, and if you've travelled far and you've brought a machine with you, the last thing you want to be doing is find out that it doesn't comply, or that there are aspects of it that will create major issues. So the idea is to get them done as quickly as possible. We'll pop down and see them, have a pre-inspection for the newcomers. Most of the chaps already know the regulations. They haven't changed an awful lot. It's more to do with the technical aspects of the classes, and again that's fairly straightforward in the regulations.
Well, we're going to go through that process in a little bit more detail in a moment. But Trevor, first of all, just tell us a little bit about your background.
I was brought in about 2008. Jeff Kirby, who is a good friend, he said I seem to be the sort of person that they required in scrutineering. I've had motorbikes all my life. Built motorbikes and stuff like that. I think my claim to fame was I built a Shuttleworth Snap years ago, and I rode around here in about 96 or something like a plonker. But yeah, I haven't competed in the TT or the Grand Prix. I would have loved to have done, but I'm not that good enough. So yeah, certainly from my point of view, around motorbikes all that time and preparation. I was in the pits back in the day for 1 or 2 people, but that was a long time ago. So since then, 2008, I joined. Certainly I joined doing the local events, so it was up at Andreas, ARA, and then after that I was the deputy in a couple more, and gradually just moved through to where we are today. There's a lot of experience within the organisation. A lot of our older members are ex-chiefs themselves, and they are very, very experienced off island as well.
Grant, tell us about your background.
My background, I joined the team 2005 for the Manx Grand Prix. Motorcycling more or less all of my life since I had to travel to work, so that's where it was, and off-road competition, mainly sidecars, competed at Isle of Man, off-road and British Championships across. Yes, just putting a little bit back into the sport that I've taken something out of, and that's what it's all about.
Ever had a bit of a desire to race the mountain?
Yes, I think so, but I think monetary value is a big issue. Probably raced on the mountain when we used to come over to watch the Manx, illegally I suppose you would say. But I think most of us did that when we came over. The good thing about the Isle of Man, it's free and easy going, welcomes motorcyclists, and it's a fantastic place to be.
Dave, remind us about your background here.
Started scrutineering about 2006. A friend of mine got me involved, sort of press ganged me into the seminar one December. Did Derby to start with, then got involved with the Manx and the TT. Was asked to become chief for the Southern 100 Club back in 2016. Took it on in 17. Rest history. That's great fun.
And that's it, isn't it? There's a great team here, and we'll go through the practicalities of what you do at any particular race meeting. That bond and that friendship is a really important part of it.
Yeah, true enough. So we're all keen motorcyclists. Some of us have raced, some haven't, some have done off-road work. But it brings you together. We are a brotherhood, sisterhood. The two-wheeled and sometimes three-wheel variety.
How many have you got?
Scrutineers, there's about 25, 30 of us now. There's admin and then some of the actual, the working on the bike scrutineers.
Okay, so Trevor, here I am a newcomer. Let's just pretend. Let's suspend that disbelief for just a moment. What is the first connection that I will have with the scrutineering team?
As a newcomer, obviously, the idea really is that you pop up and see us. We're through race office. You'll be told anyway just to come and see us, and we'll pop down to your running, have a look at your machine beforehand, address any concerns you've got. Again, not just the machine, it's the kit as well. So, a lot of learning has come out of the selection of the kit and the certification for the kit, so helmets, leathers, boots, gloves, back protector, and in this year the use of airbag suits. I was just pointing out to a colleague there that when we did a review of the use of airbag suits in the TT, it was over 60% of the riders actually wore airbag suits. The medical people, the MR, MS, they've highlighted that there are significant benefits from the lower end crashes to medium crashes, that the damage that the rider sustains is significantly less wearing an airbag suit. That's evidence-based. So on that basis, obviously, the ACU and certainly the medical people have pushed for mandatory airbag suits. So it'll be the first year that we're going to have a full grid with the suits on. There's 4 or 5 manufacturers, but there's sort of 3 typical suits that are to be used. So again, we'll be working on that. And
this is going to be perhaps a silly question, but you can't test an airbag suit, can you? Because the only way you test it is if it goes off. Yeah, I mean, again, the systems are such that they are designed for, well, certainly 2 of the systems are designed specifically for the Isle of Man. There's a lot of data that's been recovered, and my colleague Jo knows significantly about this. She was involved in the actual data collection for this, and reporting process that went back. And the actual manufacturers now have systems for actually the data that's collected, and they run a system for the Isle, so you don't get unwarranted activation. If you jump Belaff Bridge, it's not then going to go off, and that's the concern for a lot of riders, is that the old systems where you had a tether, and if you jumped off the machine for any particular reason, not realising that you were still tethered to it, you had an unwarranted activation. That's gone now. That's gone. Grant, can we just wander through here, because there's a pair of boots, just thinking about the clothing aspect. So what sort of things would you be looking for here?
With regards to the boots, the general wear and tear, to make sure there's no holes in it. When the riders go out, there doesn't need to be any skin exposed. So the gap between their boots and their leathers, and similarly with their leathers and their gloves, they need to be covered. But with regard to the boots, to make sure there's no damage, there's no wear, they're fit for purpose, and they'll keep the guy safe. And there's no protrusions where you can get your finger in and get into this inside of the boot, or there's a chance that their toes might stick out, if you know what I mean.
And, the main reason, obviously, of this is all about safety. And I just wonder what it's like when you have to have a bit of a tough conversation with people.
Sometimes the guys will bring up a pair of boots that they look to race in, and they don't actually race in them, and then they bring the good ones, their favourite ones, out of the bag later on. So there may be a little bit of a discussion to remind them that it's their safety that we're really interested in.
And what's also interesting is, obviously, people come through the scrutineering bay here, but actually the scrutineers take a walk along Glencrutchery Road when everyone's lined up.
Yes, we do. We walk the line to make sure, one, if there's a bike overheating and it's pouring water out of it, or there's any leaks, or we see anything that's untoward towards the machine, maybe the tyres going down, and we check the riders when their clothing to make sure it's covered. With regards to the suits, sometimes they're not always zipped right up, so when they're out on the course, there's a good chance that could come undone and affect their riding and affect the safety of the event. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to assume then that I've come through the scrutineering and all my clothing is absolutely fine. So Dave, just tell us what machine I'm going to be riding here.
Yeah, we've got Chris Bray's 125 here, 1978 I think it is. Be eligible for the Prix Classic races. Two-stroke, 125, 75 kilos with 25 horsepower. Very fun to ride apparently.
Well, I mean, it looks just my size, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
What do you reckon? Bring it into the scrutineering. What sort of process would you go through? Would you just talk us through what you'd start with and how you begin to look at this machine?
So Trevor's now making sure there's nothing loose, handlebars, levers, head bearings. He'll be checking the lock stops now and whether the steering damper is working properly. Checking down suspension, travel, making sure there's nothing grinding in the forks. Have a good look at the front wheel, make sure the tyre is of age, so we've a 3-year tyre age limit. Spokes now, he's checking that there's none loose, cracked, broken. He'll be having a look at the front brake, make sure there's plenty of pad left in the pads and the pads are in the right position. We have had it where both pads have been to one side of the disc, which is a bit of a disaster for the rider, but never mind. Direction of rotation, that's marked on the tyre, he's just going through that. And he's looking, making sure the valve cap is a metal one or a sealed plastic one, and a short stem, steel valve stem as well.
Just a quick tyre question, and I suppose this might be more applicable when you're thinking about the Southern 100, but obviously we know the weather can change really quickly over here. So if a bike goes through scrutineering, it's got dry tyres on, the weather changes, they change the tyres. Will you have checked those wet ones as well?
Down at the Southern 100, we check all the loose wheels. We get the guys to bring them up. So we've checked the tyres, the wheels before they've gone and before they go in. What we'll do, we'll also check that the lock wiring's been done afterwards. We have a couple of scrutineers wandering around the Parc Fermé at the Southern, just making sure that they've been installed properly.
Okay, so Trevor's continuing to have a look at my machine here. What's he looking at now?
Well, the lack of a rear light, the low visibility light, this machine, the last time it was raced, I think, was 2022. So it wouldn't have had to have a rear light on now. Everything has to have a rear light. It's just low visibility. I say not so much TT courses. Again, with the tail end of the practice sessions, it can be difficult under the trees for the guys to pick the bikes out. Down at the Southern, we'll race in the wet, so they're tantamount to they have to be on the machine.
Okay, so he's just looking at things, presumably just to make sure that everything's fixed properly?
Yeah, fixed, tight, lock wired. We've got a shark's fin he's pointing out there. That's to guard against fingers going in between the chain and sprocket. It's got to be positioned so you can't get your finger through that through the gap. Checking sump plugs, lock wired. This is 2-stroke, so there's less lock wiring involved. The 4 strokes, there's oil filters, sump plugs, filler plugs, and the belly pan of the fairing's got to be able to contain if the engine lost its oil or coolant. There's overflow bottles for the coolant, and he's just pointing out an overflow from the fuel tank for the breather and into a bottle. Tank secure, ish.
So if Trevor did find an issue here, I mean, is that sort of game over? Do you have to have you got any time to try and sort the stuff?
No, we operate what we call a sin bin, so the machine will be pushed just across the way there. And then the mechanics will be given time to rectify any faults that we've found. Then he'll get re-inspected to see what they've done and then passed off as fit to race or practice.
And typically, how long would you say it takes to look over a machine?
5 to 6 minutes a bike, probably. I'd say TT, we're looking at 250 bikes through. It's a tough old stint that we do.
And is it one scrutineer per solo machine, and is it a couple for the sidecars?
A couple for the sidecars, a single scrutineer for a solo, and we try not to look at the same bikes night on night. So we'll check if we did the machine the night before, and then we'll pass it over to a different scrutineer if we've already seen it. It just gets a different set of eyes on the machine.
And I was just talking to Grant before about the fact that sometimes you do have to have difficult conversations. So it's not just about managing the machines, it's also managing some personalities, I guess, in some aspects, and recognising that people are in a heightened state if they're nervous and whatever, and having those tricky conversations.
Yeah, if they're getting stressed about a problem with the machine, we don't want to be getting them any more stressed before they go out on the course. So again, it's sort of people management, calming them down, saying, look, we can get this sorted out. We're not here to stop you, we're here to make it safe.
Grant, can I just ask you, and I don't know whether you'd know off the top of your head, but some of the more unusual things that you see with machines?
It's not unknown to find tools in the fairing where the guys have been working on the machinery and they've dropped a tool in there, not realised, and it's there. Yeah, tyres the wrong way round is a common problem that comes across. It's quite difficult to put a finger on it. There's so many things that we're looking for, and there's no one area, specific area. One of the biggest concerns we have is ensuring that when they do change their wheels, should the weather change, particularly at the Southern 100, that they put it all back correctly and it's wire locked. And we've had a few instances where that hasn't been done properly, and we've now turned that around and we're monitoring it really heavily. So that's the main area. It's making sure the machine is safe, just looking for things. We've found screwdrivers, we've found bolts, we've found little adapters and whatever on the bike just before it's due to go out to race, and you don't want that falling out whilst you're going around the course. It might not affect you, but it might affect the guy behind.
Just tell me about the oil catching one.
Well, there's in the bottom of the fairing, you've got for a four-stroke machine, you need to be able to contain the liquids that are in the bike, half of the quantity of the liquids, and there's various ways they go about doing it. There's other ways where the engine breathes into a bottle, and we've had them turning up where the bottles are already half full, be that coolant, be that engine oil, and they're due to go out to race. And hang on, if the bottle's half full already, you've got a problem and you're not probably going to finish the race. So we keep an eye on it. We want the guys to go out, enjoy themselves, be safe, have a good run and come back cleanly. So yeah.
I'm just going to go over here and ask somebody else to introduce themselves now.
Hi, my name's Jo Warriner and I'm the Deputy Chief Technical Official for the road races and Chief at Derby for Andreas Racing Association.
Just tell us how you got into this, Jo.
Oh, mine's one of these long, it wouldn't be allowed to happen today kind of stories, where as a 15-year-old I used to go up to Derby for the racing with a 27-year-old racer who would sometimes sneak me out of school to go down to the Prix Classic, and yeah, all the things that you really would probably have social workers involved for nowadays. But he was also a scrutineer, so I started going to Derby with him. My dad was a fireman, so working shifts, so I didn't always have a lift. I would go to Derby with him, and I started off doing bits of admin, putting the stickers on the bikes, progressed from that to checking the clothing and helmets, and then one day he was just like, oh, come on, just at least do a bike, will you? You know that rule book inside out, and that's where the bike side of it started from.
And I mean, it must be a high-pressured environment at some points, but as I was saying to Dave earlier, that team mentality is so apparent.
Yeah, absolutely is. We can be the face for the riders as well, you know, between the officials that they don't see, particularly like at the Southern 100, for example, where the officials on race day are up at what we term the bus. It's not the bus anymore, but the building on the start line, you know, and then you've got Rachel and George down at the hut, but right where their bikes are, where they're camping, where they're likely to have a problem, it's us. So, you know, we hope that we're a very friendly team. We've worked hard to get that message across, that we're here to help you race. You know, we're the people that they come to for help. And
I guess open to answering questions when people first arrive as well.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we have involvement with the newcomers' weekends. We also do the Manx Grand Prix before their first practice. We'll go and check all the newcomers' bikes for them. So when they come to their first official session at Scrutineering, they know their bike's going to pass.
And it's great to see women involved in this as well, because, I mean, we'll talk a little bit more in just a moment about the sort of experience and qualifications you need to be a scrutineer, but more women coming into this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, particularly up at Andreas Racing Association, if you look at it now, you know, we've got women in most of the official places now. We've got Linda is the chairman of the club, or chairperson, I should say. We've got the race secretaries, the timekeepers, myself as the chief technical official, the chief marshal. We're all females now, so it's a big turnaround from what it was like when I started.
So before we talk about how people can get involved, I mean, there's a lot of talk about regulations and they change, and I understand there's a book in there which is probably the Regulation Bible. If we could just go back through here, how often do they typically change, Grant?
Yearly, really, unless there's major incident or that causes change. The ACU handbook, the Autocycle Union handbook, which holds the standing regulations for each of the meetings, be that motocross, trials, road racing, there's a separate section for each. That outlines what you need to conform to for your machine and your clothing, and it also outlines how the race is run. We're only, being technical officials, only interested in the technical side of things. But in addition to that, for each particular meeting, you may have supplementary regulations. So there are additions that may be added to it that are pertinent to that course that you're going to be running on. So something could be just having a different coloured number on the front of the bike. And we would check them to make sure that the numbers are the correct colours and whatever. And we check the machines and the clothing to those supplementary regulations and the standing regulations from the Autocycle Union. The supplementary regulations get updated year on year in for the particular races because things change, the machines change, we have different classes and different classes bring in different requirements that we need to meet.
And riders get sight of those well in advance?
Oh, yes. The biggest problem we do have is getting the riders to read them. They all say they've read them, and then when they turn up and the machine's there and there's a bit missing or there's something that's not right, well, they haven't obviously read the regulations. It is difficult. There's quite a bit of information in there, a lot to take in, and some of the guys aren't always technically minded who are racing, and they may not really understand the reason why we do things. I mean, there's lots of things that change over the last year with regards to oil filters on the four-stroke machines. You used to allow them to have like a hexagon on the end of the oil filter. They're banned now because in tightening it up, it damages the oil filter and there's a chance it can leak. So that's where the regulations change, like year on year in.
If I was to flick through that ACU handbook, Grant, and test you on something, how confident are you that you'd know what it was?
Not at all. No. It depends what we're all good at certain things. As was said earlier on, when the machines come through, we only look at the machine on the Monday, and then somebody else looks at it on the Tuesday. So the guy who's looking at it on the Monday is good at one area, and the guy who's looking at it at the other end is good in another area. And we complement one another, yes. To remember what's in that book, which is a good inch and a half thick, then you've got to be good. But we do tend to keep on top of it, yeah.
We've also got some interesting looking tools here. Yeah,
what would happen if there was a protest at a meeting, and that can be any meeting, that can be a motocross meeting, a trials meeting, a road race. For argument's sake, there's in the regulations it says the capacity of the machine must be 500cc, and somebody is really, really quick, and somebody says, hang on a minute, that's not 500cc, it's 650. Then we may get asked, there may be a protest, and we may get asked to measure the machines. At the end of the Manx, the classic TT and the TT, 6 of the machines are held back and they are checked over, and depending on what the clerk of the course and the technical director require, we would inspect the machine from there. We'd ask the rider or mechanic to strip it down and we would measure it. So where we have the 500cc versus 650, we would ask them to take the engine apart and we would go in and measure it. So we would use things like micrometers, vernier calipers, vernier depth gauges, telescopic gauges, and that's just for checking the engine. We make our own tools up to check clearances, and like between a fairing and a handlebar on a sidecar, we've got a little gauge we use. There's a gauge on the wall just behind me that says the maximum width of a sidecar. So we have all of that to hand, and we use it when and needed.
And it's not very often that it does happen, but I guess occasionally it can change a race result.
It can do, yes, it can do. And we don't want to be there. And there's an ulterior motive if somebody wants to cheat. We all push the boundaries. In the classes, in my days of riding off-road, we would push the boundaries. You're all keen to win. But at the end of the day, you know, if you do push the boundaries and you're caught, then that's the end of the day for you. Your credibility has gone out the window.
But again, I mean, it goes back to the idea that actually scrutineering is all about ensuring people ride as safely as possible and can do what they love doing.
Yes, it is, and it's also about riding on a level playing field. So, we're all out there, and if the regulations, be that the ACU regulations or the standing regulations from the club, say it needs to be like this, then we just make sure it is. And if we find it beforehand, we'll tell the rider, and he can do something about it, she can do something about it. But if they continue and they flout the rules, there's a good chance they'll get caught.
And there's a real sense of pride, I guess, if you get your machine through scrutineering and everything's fine, you get through the race meeting, but there's also a bit of an award that people can get for that.
Yes, with the Manx Club, put the best prepared bike for the race meeting out, so there is a little bit of a buzz that goes round with regards to that. It's another competition, so you're not just out there with a bike that's quick and a good rider, out there with a bike that's nicely prepared, nicely turned out, and that's good.
And Joe, obviously we just went through the scrutineering of a solo machine. How different is it for a sidecar?
It's very different when you're doing a sidecar. First of all, you can see a lot more of the things that we need to see to make sure that the machine's meeting the regulations. They bring the sidecar to us and they take all the fairing and everything off, so we can see it naked, as it were. We also do sidecars in pairs. One of us will work around from the front down the engine side to the back wheel, and the other works from the front in the opposite direction around the chair wheel. We do things together, we check. But the beauty of the sidecars is even if you've got two that are the same chassis manufacturer with the same engine in, they will not look the same. Every single one is set up differently. The teams have their own homemade bits and pieces. The drivers have their own ways that they like things set up. The passengers have things set up differently, and sidecars are my out-and-out favourite, so I'm a bit biased here. But basically, you get that huge variation that you don't have with modern bikes.
Have you been on a sidecar?
I have indeed, a long time ago now, but yes, I have, and I need to persuade one of our locals to take me out on a sidecar again.
Okay, we'll just leave that one there. In terms of things being held together, how much gaffer tape do you typically see through a race meeting?
Actually, surprisingly, not a lot. When I first started, it was a different story. But yeah, people are so much more professional nowadays. You hear that sort of expression about Fred in his shed, bringing his bike out, and honestly, that the way it's changed over the years is phenomenal. Everybody is more professional. Everybody's bikes are more turned out. We've had bikes that were so dirty we've refused to scrutineer them. If you're not cleaning your bike, you can't see if anything's gone wrong. You come back after each practice session or each race day. If you're cleaning the bike down, you see new cracks, new faults, that kind of thing. And we're long past those days, thankfully. Everybody's really up their game, and it's great to see.
So for a newcomer who arrives here then, Joe, one of the scrutineers will go round, as we heard, to the tent. You'll come up with your clothing and whatever. How long before your race or qualifying session will you be up here and needing your bike through scrutineering?
So the rider themselves, the scrutineering session rather, starts a couple of hours before we're actually ready to close the roads, by which time we can have most of the machines done in that time. So this is, again, where the flexibility comes in and why it's nice to have lots of volunteers, because practice week is often a working day for a lot of people. So those that don't work are here and ready to start, and those that do work can arrive here around sort of 5:30, 6-ish, and then we can do almost like a shift changeover, let the others that have been here since 3:30 go and get a cup of tea, and we can have a bit of a changeover. So even if you can't commit for a full fortnight, then we're always grateful to have another pair of hands.
I did notice the kettle and the biscuit supply in there. I'm sure that that is something that keeps you going through the race meetings.
Certainly, and I seem to have become the official baker as well. It was a comment many, many years ago from the lovely Conrad Harrison when I was scrutineering his sidecar about how women should be in the kitchen baking cake. So I'm sure you can imagine that's a very Conrad thing to say, all said in jest, of course. But since then, just to prove the point, yes, I do bake a lot of cakes over the fortnight.
I know where I'll be heading then. The other thing that we obviously have to contend with over here, and it doesn't happen very often, does it? But the weather can be a little bit changeable. And I just wonder, from the point of view of having scrutineered all those bikes for a session, they're all out there in the paddock ready to go, and then the rain comes in and the session's called off. I mean, that must be so frustrating.
Not so for us, really, is it? It's the poor riders. Yes, it is frustrating. It's frustrating for everybody. But in particular, we don't mind that we've done that work for nothing, in effect, because the bike's now ready for the next time that we do get to go out, and hopefully the riders can go and decompress a little, but we really, really feel for them.
If that session is held over to another day, they'd have to go through the scrutineering process again, though?
They do indeed, yeah. So it's not a case that, we don't bother scrutineering it the next night because we don't know what they've changed back at their tent or their awning. And likewise, we still swap scrutineers around, so we don't know what the previous scrutineer may have not seen something that needs changing. Hopefully their bike was prepped and ready for that night. And then when it's cancelled, they are ready for the next day.
We have everything crossed this year. Maybe you just need to do some sort of little sun dance as well as everything else, Jo.
Well, it's worked today, hasn't it? It's beautiful up here today. But yeah, we're not racing today, unfortunately.
And Jo, something that's been mentioned a couple of times is the noise measuring. I mean, that isn't presumably just going around a machine and thinking, oh, that's really loud. How do you do that?
No, we have meters that are calibrated each year back at the ACU. We don't actually use them for the road race meetings on Island. They are used for off-road events. But for our road meetings, and that includes Andreas, we have dispensation in the Isle of Man. However, we have that equipment available, so if any of our road racers are going off island for a test day or a race meeting, we can and do check their machines before they go for them.
And that's a great example again, isn't it, of just how approachable this team of people is and how much you want people to be able to do what they love doing.
Yeah, that's what we're here for, is to help people race, and we hope that we really are that approachable. And, it's not unheard of to have people come round your house and get the noise meter out and that sort of thing, and maybe annoy the neighbours slightly for a few minutes, but hey.
Do your friends who have bikes see you coming and think, oh, flipping heck, what's she going to find now?
I tend to get it the other way. I had somebody wanted to put their bike through the Manx test recently and didn't mention it to me, and then came afterwards and said, my bike's just failed the Manx test. And I said, well, yeah, the chain's rusty, the sprocket's rusty, you should have done this, you should have done that, so yeah, you do get a little bit of that.
You're listening to Startline, brought to you by the Manx Motorcycle Club. We're with members of the Isle of Man Scrutineering Association today, and I mentioned right at the start about the sort of qualifications and experience this association looks for people who might want to get involved. Let's find out. I mean, obviously, we sort of touched on the experience that you have all had and how you came to be here, Dave. But if somebody's listening and thinking, oh, do you know what, it sounds like something I want to be part of, what sort of person would you be looking for?
Well, anybody that's got an interest in motorcycles and scrutineering. You don't have to be a motorcyclist, you don't have to be an engineer. You can come and sit the seminar, you can come and visit us at Derby, see what we do, and see if you fancy it.
And Jo, in terms of commitment, what sort of thing would people be expecting to do in terms of time?
Well, as you're aware, there are lots of motorbike meetings on the Isle of Man and big stretches, the 2 events that are a fortnight long each. But you wouldn't have to commit to everything. What we say to people, as Dave's just said, come and visit us at Derby and see what we do, see where you think you might fit in. There's all sorts of different roles. It doesn't even have to just be working on the bikes. It can be admin or whatever. We can fit you in for whatever hours you're available.
Grant, something we haven't talked about actually is the admin, because I'm guessing you have to keep notes of everything that goes on in here.
Yes, we do. The chief technical official for the meeting has a responsibility to keep the paperwork and pass that on to the club. We have our day-to-day, so if we're at the Southern 100 or the TT, then the machines will be coming through on consecutive days. So we would have cards. Those cards would represent the rider and the machine. They come through with the machine. It's given to the technical official. They read through to check to see what faults have been found. So there's an administration in looking after that. There's logging it onto the computer system. There's keeping an eye of who the entries are. It's keeping an eye to make sure the machines and the riders have been through and been checked before going out onto the course. And a technical official cannot exist without a technical assistant or administrator standing behind them. Unfortunately, we lost one of our team members last year who was a big player on the technical administration side, and we do miss him. But yeah, there is a requirement for that as well. It's just not just getting down and looking up the dark end of a motorbike, it's the paperwork as well.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I guess people might assume that you have to have some sort of mechanicking background or certain qualifications, but actually you're looking at the person as a whole.
Yeah, we're a team, we work as a team. If we're not sure about something, there's always somebody there to back us up. And if you're interested in becoming a technical official, the ideal way is to come and see us at Derby, make yourself known, and then we would slowly take you through the process and you probably sit and watch somebody going through a bike, and over a period of time you might assist, and you get to a point where you'd probably be competent enough to do the bike itself, or the clothing, or maybe just the administrative side of things. And if you want to become a full-blown technical official, at the end of the year we run a seminar where you get a licence that lasts for 3 years.
And there are different types of licence?
Yes, there is. Ideally, you would be a technical official, be that for road racing or off-road events, or both. And then on top of that, you can add to that by being a sound measurer for off-road racing and road racing, and also be a measurer where you would measure the engines, the components of the bike, and we would take you all the way through that. We have our own gear to teach people how to do it, and each of those disciplines are licensed, so there'll be 5 licenses. And as time goes on, you could apply to become a senior technical official, and maybe even ask to be a chief technical official by the hosting club. Every 3 years we renew our licence. It's a way of keeping competent. We brief the guys of what's been changed over the period of time. We run it ourselves on behalf of the Autocycle Union. We do it up here in the grandstand. We had a good turnout. I think in November we ran a licensing session, and we had 20 people. Of those, I think there was a good 5 or 6 that were there for the first time. And of those guys, 3 of them were more or less committed to assisting us at Derby and other events.
And Dave, being part of the Isle of Man Scrutineers Association, there's a social side to it as well.
Yeah, so we can have a bit of fun away from actually the events. We were 10-pin bowling last weekend. It was a good laugh. There's about 18 of us. So it's good to get together away from the high-stress environment of the racing.
And what would you say to somebody who's thinking, do you know what, it sounds like something I want to be part of?
Facebook page for the Isle of Man Scrutineers Association. Have a look at that. Like I say, come see us at Derby. We're always there to chat.
Even if you're feeling a bit unsure, as I certainly was when I first switched to doing the bikes themselves, just come along anyway, come and see. It's not as technical as you might think it is. We really, really do have a big emphasis on teamwork. It's not unheard of for any one of us to say, I'm not sure about that, guys, what do you think? And we'll go and check the regulations together.
And you are one of the most recognised faces in the paddock, and I guess you become friends with all these people as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've tried to be anonymous, but that's not worked. I stand out a little bit more from the others sometimes.
And Trevor, I guess it brings us back to what we were saying at the beginning, that, the idea of going through scrutineering can be really daunting, because you maybe have the impression that you're just on the lookout for faults and to try and find something wrong, but that's not necessarily the case.
No, not at all. We're there to help and assist, and hopefully, smooth that process as we can through the bay and out and onto the circuit. People think we're there, just trying to catch things out. It's not the case. Literally, we are not the fun police. We're there. We want to see racing. We want to see safe racing. We want to see racing that's competitive and compliance with the regulations.
And if people have got questions, maybe riders, teams beforehand, where would be the best place for them to go?
Well, the first point of call really is either the deputy or the chief of that meeting. Obviously, each meeting does have slightly different regulations depending on what the classes that are being run. But, the chief technical officer should be able to answer those questions. And
for somebody who's so involved in the bike world, it must be a long winter for you as well, but gearing up for the start of the season?
Absolutely. We're off Island fairly shortly, going to look at some sidecars. The sidecar regs are slightly adjusted this year again. So for the TT, a small team will be heading away just to inspect those at a race circuit away. So prior to them actually getting here, we'll have had an opportunity to look at the machines.
Trevor Denning there. Wasn't that just brilliant? Honestly, what a fantastic group of people. I also have to say a huge hello and thank you to Carrie, who didn't want to be interviewed but makes the best cup of tea ever, and there was cake too. If that is not a reason to go and find out more about this association and see if it's something for you, I don't know what is. The details as ever on the podcast page, but a huge thank you to Trevor, Dave, Grant and Joe and Carrie and Chris for bringing the bike in too. It was just fascinating. There are some great photographs on the Startline social media pages. Well, thank you so much for downloading and listening to this episode of Startline, brought to you by the Manx Motorcycle Club. If you can, do follow the riders, the teams, the organisers and officials that we've been talking about. Your support really makes a difference. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can email Beth at startline.im.